All right. Let's get this out of the way first. The thoughts, views, and opinions expressed on Tailboard Talks Firefighter podcast are solely those of the speakers, guests, and host, and do not in any way represent the thoughts or views or opinions of any other employer, partnership, or sponsor. The material and information in this podcast is for general information purposes only. It should be used at the listener's discretion.
Here comes the intro. Skip forward 30 seconds if you want to get right to the episode. This is the Tailboard Talk podcast, the best health, wellness, and lifestyle resource for the fire service. We're using stories, lessons, and tips from the front lines to give a realistic view of what the job can do to us and how we can make it out alive. I'm Chris Morella, a firefighter since 03, medic since 05, full-time since 08, and promoted to lieutenant in 20. I'm also a personal trainer and strength coach, and I'm here to give you the best information and host the best discussions to make us capable and durable, both on the job and away from it. So grab a heater, steal some fancy creamer from First Shift, and let's go chat. Well, let's get going. Hey everybody, welcome back to Tailboard Talks Firefighter Podcast. I'm Chris, your host from Fourth Shift Firefighter. Full effect! We're back in, sorry if that was too loud, I'll try to edit it down, in what we call post-production. Full effect of the Fourth Shift Firefighter. Stickers up, websites changed, Instagram handle and Facebook social handles are changed, YouTube pages changed. We are all in on the Fourth Shift Firefighter. Just showing off the YouTube sticker there. Stickers will be available on the website. That's being finalized just in the next couple of days here. We're just ironing some stuff out. The website will be up and I'll start pushing it around. You can buy stickers, the old logo shirts, old logo winter hats, and then more stuff on there to come. So, I put a little thing up yesterday or today about why I made the changes to Fourth Shift Firefighter. I think I'm just going to repeat it again. It's all just because we've been branching out. We've really been branching out with specifically the podcast, and then with my recent speaking engagements, it's been more wellness stuff and lifestyle stuff and leadership stuff. And fitness plays a part in that. It's got a little role to play in that stuff, but it's more like we're talking about fitness stuff. We're talking about lifestyle stuff that has fitness included and less so of a fitness thing trying to change your lifestyle. So change it to Fourth Shift Firefighter. That also means that I got an interview coming up with a guy, and we're going to talk about a little bit of tactics stuff. This guy was part of a department who had a mass shooting, and their department responded to it. They were also, because of the circumstance, part of it when it initially started going off. We're talking a little bit of tactics with that, and so a little bit of response, decision-making, stuff like that, but also talking about the mental, emotional, and physical toll that took on his department and why, surprisingly, his department was kind of custom-made to deal with something like this due to the circumstances. So that's all coming, but that would be a weird conversation for a fitness page to have, not for a firefighter page to have, though. That's very in line with a firefighter lifestyle and wellness page. So made the shift, Fourth Shift Firefighter. Let's get back into the topic today. The topic today is something called the illusory truth effect, or the illusion of truth effect. And once we start talking about it, you're going to realize that it is pretty much the basis for the fire service. There's been a lot of things that fall into this category. Hopefully, as I'm talking, you'll remember more and more will come to mind, and you're going to be like, oh, that's exactly what this is. So the illusory truth effect is essentially the theory that says repeated statements are considered more true than new statements, and the longer you hear something, the more likely you're to believe it as fact, as opposed to something that contradicts it or is just a different thought than it that is a new or a seldom stated or lesser frequently stated thing. So I tried to think of a few of them in the fire service. The biggest one I could think of was pushing fire, right? We were told for a long time that you could push fire. Spread fire through a house because of an incorrect attack tactic. And thanks to science, like so many other things, we proved that false. But if you listen to people give accounts of getting steamed or burned or having products come back on them in a fire, you would have to believe them because not many people have been in that circumstance. And to them, it seemed like fire was coming at them or they spread fire throughout the house. It was repeated time and time again. It was kind of a thing. And now it's faded away. Hopefully it's faded away greatly because of science. But that's one on the fire side. On the paramedic side, it's the old oxygen can't hurt, right? And now we know that there's definitely some patients that should not have 15 liters through a non-rebreather, right? There's some very specific protocols and times when over 94 pulse ox can be pretty damaging. So we know that, right? But back in the day, and if you listen to the old good street medic, quote unquote, good street medic guy, give everybody oxygen, right? Every heart attack, every stroke, every trauma gets oxygen. Whoopsies, right? Now on the fitness side of it, we have like the old standby of deadlifts are bad for your back, or you're going to hurt your back doing squats, stuff like that. We know it's just not true, right? But the loud voices said frequently enough, and a lot of people believed it and still believe it to this day. And then another big one in the fitness world, general wellness world, is that ice is good for injuries. And this is a big one. This is something I would like to have a professional expert talk on. But essentially, at this point, in the sciencey scheme of fitness, they've disproven the Rice method, specifically the ice part of it. And the guy who originally did it on cadavers and blah, blah, blah. And essentially they said that if you take this cadaver tissue and drop it X number of degrees, it can slow the death on the cadaver tissue. So then we thought like, well, if I injured my leg, I want to slow the death process from that injury, the damage process from that injury. Turns out all we were doing was slowing down the fluid, and that fluid turns over, and when it turns over, it gets rid of the bad stuff and brings the good stuff in, a lot like blood flow. When we ice something, we slow that down, and we actually prolong some of the damage that's being done, right? So it's a total shift, right? It's a total shift, but for the longest time, you heard, like, you sprain your ankle, ice it. You hurt your shoulder, ice it. If you play baseball, ice your shoulder. It's just the common wisdom, the conventional wisdom that got passed down time and time again and became part of how you operate. But it's false. And the people who would stand up and say, don't ice your ankle after you roll, it's not going to do any good. In fact, we need to maybe give some compression, a little bit of mobilization, work on range of motion, do these exercises, be patient, right? Those people are like, get out of here, man. You're going to hurt me worse. When in fact, that might be, turns out, the much better treatment. So that's a thing. The illusory truth effect. The more you hear something, the more you believe it to be true, regardless of its actual basis in fact or not, okay? And we tend to not investigate those things. We just take them as fact. So what happens when we do that to ourselves? And this is kind of what I want to talk about today. If you guys haven't noticed, most of the topics that I talk about on the podcast are things I'm either working through or trying to figure out for myself or have worked through, and it was like not a light bulb moment necessarily, but like, oh, okay, a realization moment. Because that's kind of what firefighters do, right? First responders do. Basically, we try to solve other people's problems, and hopefully along the way, maybe we solve our own too, which was actually the real focus of that thing, the real purpose for us wanting to help other people, right? But what happens when we convince ourselves of something about ourselves because we've said it so often? How does that work? And let me tell you what, based on the reading I did, it works extremely effectively. You can essentially convince yourself of what you think of yourself, good, bad, or indifferent. So my brother works for the same department as me. He's older than me. He was hired before me, and he was kind of a rabble rouser back in his day. He's changed a lot out of necessity, but he got hired. A few years went by, and then I got hired. And then whenever I would be a loudmouth or something, it would always come down like, well, he's a Morella. What do you expect? And immediately I caught on to that. I'm like, well, what does that mean? Like, I knew what it meant, right? I knew exactly what it meant. But what does that mean? Because I'm similar to my brother in a lot of ways, but I'm very different in a lot of other ways. And so to me, I was like, well, you can't just categorize two people that have the same last name as something. So what I did was, because I was much more angsty back then and a little more aggressive, I'd put it back on someone. And whenever they fell down or made a misstep or got busted doing something, I'd be like, well, he's a Smith. What do you want to do? I mean, that's just what Smiths do. And everybody's like, well, that's kind of funny. I see what you're doing there. The guy who I was talking about, and Smith, that's just an arbitrary name. I'd be like, well, what's that supposed to mean? I'm like, well, whatever bad thing you think it means, that's what it means, because I know you're not saying he's just a Morella in a positive term, right? So ultimately, I realized years and years later that I get to decide what that means. I get to decide what it means to be just a Morella, right? And there were certainly some traits and some things that I do that were like non-negotiable, right? But what I chose to do with those traits, that was what made me That was what defined what being a Morella is, right? So flash forward to this day. I'm not saying it's necessarily the highest or the most distinguished part of showing growth, but my brother's a captain and I'm a lieutenant. So we've taken that just a Morella name and maybe transformed it into something more than just like a pain or a troublemaker or a liability or something like that, right? We've shown that we can take those things that make us us and use them for good, not bad. Use them for positive and growth, not negative and destruction. We choose to do that. That's a big choice. So ultimately, you get to do the same thing, right? Then there's people all the time. If you just sit around the table and you listen, some guys will be like, I'm just a fat guy, or I'm just a fat kid, or I'm not a fitness freak like that. I'm not going to be doing that, or my knees don't bend like that anymore, or that's for young guys to do, crawl around like that, or blah, blah, blah. I'm just a dumb fireman, I'm not someone that they want to promote. They don't want to promote a guy like me. You hear those statements all the time. And more often than not, I've seen that as a measure to protect ourselves, right? We're defining who we are as something that can't do something, because trying to do that something is pretty risky. You might not succeed in it. You might look like a jerk doing it. You might fail at it and be embarrassed. So if you just define yourself as someone who can't possibly do that, or wouldn't be involved in that, or they don't want there, you save yourself that heartache and you save yourself all that trouble of trying. And okay, if you want to do that, you can, but you can also change that. Like, if you say that enough, right? If you say, I'm not the kind of guy they want to promote, or they wouldn't want me promoted, you might say it the first time because you're like in and out of it, not quite sure. You know that you've maybe pissed a few people off, or your character or your personality doesn't mesh well with the current leadership. But 10 years later, you're still saying it. They wouldn't want me. Well, it's a whole new group of people up there. And it might be people with similar tendencies or leadership styles, but it's new people 10 years later. So you're just using that now. Maybe because of the illusory truth effect, you've convinced yourself of that. Despite the landscape change and the possibility, potential change, the opportunities that come up, you've convinced yourself somewhere along the way that you're not promotable because of who you are or what you do. And that's just at that point a bummer, because it's not true most of the time. It's something that you've created and bought into and convinced yourself that it's true, but it's not true. It's not true at all. But you can change it, is what I'm saying. But only if you want to. And I'm not saying pull a 180 and start professing yourself as the ultimate promotable, and now they do want me, and now blah, blah, blah. It's kind of like the gratitude thing, and I've spoken about this before with gratitude and with setting intentions. Just a few episodes ago, I think I talked about that. I can't do like a broad, generic, overarching one for the day or week or year or anything like that. I have to do acute ones, very small ones. So all it takes is listening to yourself and realizing what you're saying. And when you say those things like, they want to let me promoted, or I'm just a fat kid, stop yourself and then put something 2 notches less harsh in there. And that's whatever you want to make it, right? Like, maybe I'll try, or maybe maybe I will clash with them too much, or I'm not in the best shape, but I'm working towards it. I'm not just a fat kid, but I could be in better shape. Something like that. Soften the blow on yourself, man. Start believing a more positive truth about yourself that might get you closer to the person that you actually want to be, instead of just guarding yourself and protecting yourself with these exaggerated claims of who you are or who you aren't, so you don't have to get involved and risk it, right? And then just practice it, man. There was a long time, I wrote down here, so you have to just continually recognize what comes naturally because of the way you condition yourself to believe through that illusory truth effect, and then consciously adjust it. One step at a time, each and every time, right? I wrote down here advanced 12 leads. Another kind of off topic from trash talking yourself, but there was a long time where when we introduced 12 leads, or when they got introduced to us, there were people who were like, it's too difficult for dumb firemen. It's too complicated for the street. We're not cardiologists. We're not going to learn this. And over the course of a little bit of time, some guys actually convinced themselves that not only does it not belong, but we're not going to learn it because we can't. But then all it takes is a little bit of like, okay, we're not cardiologists. Let's not be silly here. But can we understand the principles of it? And if we can understand the principles of it, is it that difficult to understand the principles that you can actually use in pre-hospital medicine? Is it really that bad? It's not. But if you've convinced yourself that it's this big, ugly thing you should never grasp on, then yeah, it is. It might be. It might be errantly labeled as that, and you might just believe it, and you suck at 12 leads, but now you're not valuable to the crew because we need people that can read 12 leads, right? The other one I wrote down here was they don't want someone like me as a lieutenant. I'm not going to change to make them happy. Well, who are you talking about? First of all, assume that you're talking about you and your personality clash with the administration, right? And that might be true, but I've had this person talk to me and say, I'm not going to go for promotion because they don't want me. I'm not going to change who I am to make them happy. And I said, don't. If you're pursuing that position and you test well, or you do projects that the staff likes, or you put yourself in that leadership role and you're effective, all they want you to do is get a version of yourself that they can live with. Let me say that again. What you need to find is a version of yourself that they can work with and you can live with. And a lot of times that does not mean changing yourself at all. It means editing yourself for 7 to 10 seconds a day. That's it. So the things you want to say out loud, you make those the quiet parts. And the quiet parts that might be positive and helpful, you make those the loud parts. And voila, they think you're a whole new person. You're not. You're just editing yourself like an adult and like a human, right? They wouldn't want me in that position because I would tell them the truth and they can't handle that. Well, that just means you suck at talking to people and you can't tell the truth effectively and communicate it without trying to make somebody mad. So then that ends the argument, right? We all know what that means, right? How much more valuable would you be if you were the person that could take the unpopular truth or go to staff and tell them something uncomfortable from below and effectively get that across to produce change, instead of saying to the guy like, well, I wish they would listen to me, but they don't want some guy like me talking to them? How much better would the department be, and how much better would you be as a leader, and people would trust you more and believe in you and support you and fall behind you if you were the person that could do that? But it's so much easier just to fall and be like, well, they think I suck, so I guess I suck. And they don't want to hear it from me, so I'm not going to give it to them. I mean, come on. We're selling ourselves short all the time. It's not comfortable by any means. It might not work, which is a bummer, right? But it's better than protecting yourself or just hamstringing yourself constantly, because that little leap of faith is just too uncomfortable, because then you're in, then you're one of them, then you're bought in, then you're whatever, right? But you don't have to be. Think of the people you respect versus the people you don't necessarily respect on the job. There's definitely the people that are the suck-ups and the pets and everything that's wrong with leadership. Those people exist, right? But there's also a group of guys that have more values like you, just aren't afraid to express those values in a productive way. But then there's also the group that are throwing rocks from the bottom. The people who have the similar values as you, but would rather just kind of retract and continue to cut people and things down because they wouldn't want me. They have to shelter their ego with the wall of lies about themselves that they tell themselves, right? This turned into way more of a rant than I expected to. I don't know why this got me so fired up, but maybe it's because I think some people have a lot of good potential. Man, they blow it by just lying to themselves, and they just then it just sucks because you want them to get involved, and you can't want it more than them, and you see what positive they could do for the department or the whatever. But they've just conditioned themselves, and they've lied to themselves long enough where now they can't go against that because they've been professing this character for so long of like the grumpy old guy or the fat kid or the rabble rouser or the anti-establishment guy. Like, you're not that much anti-establishment. You're still spending the checks, pal. So, but they've built this character around it where they feel like they can't go against it or they'll be betraying who they are, when the whole time it's not really who they are. They've molded themselves to be that person over time, but it's not who they are. And so it's a bummer. It's like, well, that's just wasted potential. That's wasted person. That's a drain on the system. It's a resource that the new guys don't have. It's a resource that the old guys don't have. It's a loss of experience, a loss of knowledge that can be passed on, a loss of community in the fire service, a loss of continuity in your station and camaraderie in your station. It's a loss of all those things when you convince yourself that you're unusable or not worthy or against the very thing that you show up to do and you chose to do. We used to have a guy that would say like, hey man, I'm really sorry they kidnapped you to take this test, but now you work here. Meaning like no one kidnapped you. You chose on your own volition to not only apply, take the test, go through the hiring process, stick it through probation, and be here, but somewhere along the line, you made it seem like someone kidnapped you and shoved you in this spot and you're here against your will. What? Why? Like, why would you want to have that be your career? Why would you want to have that level of awesomeness every day that you work? Doesn't look fun, doesn't sound fun. So what I'm saying is, change it, man. Change it one little step at a time, right? Maybe instead of that snarky comment, you just edit yourself for those 3 seconds, and all of a sudden, no big thing happened that day. And we went through this big talk, and you know what? So-and-so didn't say anything, which is kind of not like him. Usually he jumps right in, and he says all these things, and he's got an opinion, and he's got jokes. He just sat there. He didn't say much about it. Maybe, I don't know, maybe he's changing. Maybe he doesn't want to be part of that anymore. That's how you slowly but surely do it. And time after time of that, wow, strange. You're not the person that people expect to screw up anymore or be the liability or whatever, right? I feel like we got a little, we're on topic, I think. I don't know. This one spun out for me, I think. But change it. If you don't like it, change it. I think you're going to find out that if you take the steps to change it, there's far more people that will be happy that you made the change or started to, not even like this enormous transformation, but happy that you're approaching things in a different way, welcoming of it, supporting of it, compared to that small little group of wallow in the mud people that you used to hang out with, or the people that would be like, yeah, you are the fat guy, and like drive you further into that lie that you've been telling yourself. I think time and time again, I've seen more support for the people willing to make those changes than they expected. I'll just say that. Than they expected. So don't be afraid to change it a little at a time. Nothing drastic, nothing shocking. You're not going to come in and shock your crew one day and be a different person, right? But just little by little, stop lying to yourself. Stop telling yourself the destructive lies that you have no choice but to believe, because the illusory truth effect says that if you say it enough, you're going to start believing it whether you want to or not. So stop lying to yourself and hurting yourself. Start being a 4-shift firefighter. I don't know, man. I don't know. That one felt slimy, but what are you going to do? All right. If you guys dig what I'm saying and you would like to have me out to your department and or at your conference, man, I would love that. That's going to be the focus of the 4-shift firefighter for me, is getting out to conferences, speaking engagements, departments, symposiums, stuff like that. I would love to do it. Second to that, if you like the fitness stuff and you want some digital coaching, I can do that on a month-to-month basis. And we can use an app to send you workouts and go back and forth, and I can be your fitness coach in that regard also. All that stuff's available. Stickers and shirts and hats and stuff on the website very soon. Thanks for listening. As always, if you want to, I think on the new website we put the Buy Me a Coffee button down there at the bottom too. You can always just donate to the show. I'm going to be trying to get a new camera soon. And if you were on social media, follow me at 4-shift Firefighter. I'm really toying with the idea of getting a small 13, 14, 16-foot camper at the biggest, like an old one, like an old canned ham, metal-sided thing, and making that 4-shift studios. Toying with the idea. I think I like it, but that'll be a much bigger fundraising effort if we go that way. All right, guys, thanks again for listening and hanging out. Let me know if you need anything. Hit me up on social media or Chris at 4thshiftfirefighter.com. We'll talk to you soon. Keep on being more capable and durable, both on the job or on shift and away from it, and be a 4-shift firefighter.